And we are live on Facebook. I am going to be discussing my time in Aspen Springs, Colorado. Specifically, Archuleta County, Colorado, also known as Pagosa Springs. So I'm going to be giving a review of that. And this is something that I've been meaning to do for some time. So stay with me, right? There are some links that you should also be able to see. And if they aren't there now, I will make sure that they are there later. These have to do with content that I've created over the years, having to do with warning America about China and Russia, standing up for off-gridders, warning women about human trafficking. I've also discussed the spiritual warfare taking place in America. I've interviewed a lot of people. And so when you're someone that covers those things and you're from a place like Portland, Oregon, you can come under a lot of judgment from the mainstream leftists. And so becoming homeless after I got fired from Ruth Chris Steakhouse 5 years to the day, it led to decisions that led to me living off grid. I also opened up a preparedness survival store. I also moved around a lot. I also stood up for white off-gridders in Costilla County being kicked off their land by what seemed to be maybe even a racist Hispanic county that didn't want people investing in land there. And so we'll get into that later, right? But it's very important that people know that I have this history. So I ended up in Pagosa Springs in 2016, and life was not easy for me to live there without a firearm because I made mistakes in the late 90s doing heroin, recovering from child abuse, trying to recover from child abuse throughout my life. And a bad person of Norwegian heritage led me in the direction of abusing myself in that way. And I got sober in 2003 or 4. And then I got involved in Access TV and had a show for a number of years. So it's important that people understand my history and the massive amount of content that I have created free of charge to help people wake up to things that are to occur. But due to the fact that I am of mixed race heritage with a father from the Middle East and a white mother, despite the fact that I'm not Muslim and I'm not an immigrant, I have faced, in fact, way more judgment than, in fact, my own father has than his relatives because, again, and you should be able to figure this out by now, I got involved in the conspiracy theory movement, which is mostly dominated by people that support Trump now and people that lean towards the white genocide narrative, the idea that white people are being replaced. And so even though I stood up for white off-gridders being kicked off their land in Costilla County, I still faced a lot of prejudice, and a lot of people did not like the off-gridders coming to live off-grid in Colorado in various places. And so I was seen as the point man in the sense that my videos got out there to larger press in September, October 2015. And so many people, many of the Hispanics in Costilla County, Colorado, blame me for drawing attention to the issue. And many people elsewhere in the state blame me as well, who believe that people shouldn't be able to live off the grid. So in Archuleta County, which now the land doubled 2 or 3 times what it used to be worth several years ago, you can live off grid without certain building permits, even though it states in their land use code, you can still live off grid and be left alone for the most part from code enforcement. And so that's why I ended up there. I had a friend named Ryan Mcpherson. And Ryan, if you're out there, if you want to talk again, feel free to reach out. I'm more than open to making new friends with people that respect me for me and how hard I've worked to try to wake people up. Check out my website, alexansary.substack.com. Check out my YouTube channel, OTB TV 2.0. For those of you that think you've exposed a few things about the NWO, watch my video, 66 Questions, and ask yourself if you walk one day in your life in my shoes. Because in the entire conspiracy theory movement, so-called truth movement, nobody's a combination of genetics with a father from the East, born in Afghanistan, with a grandfather and grandmother on my mother's side of Germanic, Austrian, Welsh, and English bloodline. My grandfather's last name was Nagl, Nagel. My grandmother's last name was Lewis, as in the Lewis bloodline, right? For those that know anything about bloodlines and certain last names. So I grew up and came up, folks, not in a foreign family that read the Quran, but in a family that was open about white supremacy. Okay, so that's the world I grew up in. I'm not multicultural, I'm one culture. So living in Pagosa Springs and having some unfortunate things happen to me there, feeling the judgment there, not being able to make any friends there was traumatizing to me. The first thing that I'll say is special thanks goes to Wen Saunders for working with me to help me get on a payment plan, owner's financing, to where I paid about $259 per month to the title company there in downtown Pagosa Springs. So every month they would automatically withdraw a certain amount from my bank account. And so I worked at Tony's Pagosa Brewing for a few months. And while I'm happy to have a job there and I put the money into a shed, Tony worked me half to death. I worked 14 days when I got hired there, and he didn't so much as say thank you. He promised me a raise, it never came. And one of his managers, one of his cook staff managers, came around the back of the counter and got in my face and tried to instigate a fight when I thought that when the power went down, that the meal tickets were being duplicated. As in, I thought that they already made the food already and that it was duplicating tickets. Maybe he was right, maybe I was right. We never found out. And so I find it unprofessional that Tony allowed that to happen to me. And he also had an issue with his workers going out and chain smoking and coming back in to cook food without necessarily washing their hands. He also had a certain amount of heroin junkies working for him as well. So what I've come to learn is you can be talented and be a hard worker, but if you are the wrong ethnicity, you are going to be spited at some of these rural areas in Colorado and elsewhere in America. And they will actually prefer people that are tall white junkies to a short brown man that has actually busted his ass for 15 years to wanting to wake the world up to what is happening with this system. So I did earn a certain amount of money from Tony's Pagosa Brewing, and I ended up working at a few other places. And let me tell you why I ended up working at a few other places. You see, you may have heard about the crackdown on conspiracy theory in 2017 after Trump was elected. Again, I'm independent. I'm not left or right. So I called up the corruption with Trump. By the way, how'd you like Operation Warp Speed? By the way, how'd you like that $5 trillion in debt? By the way, how'd you like that Trump releasing 5,000 Taliban members out of prison in Afghanistan? Do you like them? You like that french fries, right? Would you like a Coca-Cola to go with that Taliban release? So I was not wrong when I predicted Trump was the president. And I was not wrong when I said that he was a part of the system and he was playing people. What has Trump done for off-gridders? What has Trump done to legalize weed at the federal level? So you're corrupt and you're a hypocrite if you like Trump and you smoke weed and you're off-grid. It's Democrats that legalize weed, and it's people like myself that stood up for off-gridders. Donald Trump hasn't done anything to stand up for off-gridders, and don't you forget that. Okay, the government's cracking down on off-grid living. So stop the worship of the government. So here I am of mixed race heritage with a last name like Ansary. The man that delivered the shed in my house said, Ansary, huh? Are you related to that Pakistani comedian? Like, wow, wow. How do you think it felt to be in an area without a gun, surrounded by guns, and some of your neighbors screaming inward, inward, inward into the air? Knowing that you might trigger someone's PTSD if they blew away people that look just like you. You think that's fair? How would you like it? Have you been through what I've been through? Likely you haven't. So because of the crackdown on alternative media and a lack of donations, I ended up having to find work elsewhere. I also got really stressed out because people obsessed with the white genocide theory seemed obsessed with the fact that someone of my heritage was living off grid, and they weren't living off grid yet. And so a lot of people focused on my energy and sent me hate and trolled me and berated me when I tried to stand up for my own value as a man. And that was a lot to take in an area where I didn't have friends and I didn't have people to hang out with. I worked at a few other places. Let me go over my list here. Okay, so there is a folk festival that happens every year in Pagosa, and there's a restaurant by the name of Hmong, Hmong, ONG. And so when I worked for this woman and her husband and her boyfriend in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, at the folk festival, she had me going to get food from the cooler. And instead of having me grab everything at once, she had me grab one box at a time. In fact, the people that were organizing that says you really need to get your stuff at once instead of going back and forth. We've got traffic here. So she's not really thinking very clearly about the things that she needs from the cooler. And I admit I consume cannabis, so maybe she was turned off by that. But I didn't do anything mean to her. I didn't treat her with disrespect. And she did ask me when I was hired, now I know why, do you have family? And she was asking me basically if I had any roots there, if anyone would stand up for me in the event that she would take advantage of me. She was gathering information about me. So I told her, no family. Nobody cares about me and my family. Not my father, not my mother, no family. Okay, good to know. I parked her car and her car stopped working. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault that her car stopped working. So she decided that she wasn't going to pay me. And I later filed with the state to get a payment. So this woman of Vietnamese heritage, who unfortunately her ancestors suffered discrimination and she herself lived in a refugee camp, despite that, she thought that she would take advantage of me or try to and not pay me. And so that was also a very stressful experience. I worked at the malt shop and worked for a guy who was an ex-con who treated me with gross disrespect. And I didn't like that. And we didn't get along. And there was some workplace bullying there with some of the girls, white girls there that were doing methamphetamines. And there were a lot of other things about that place. However, I did hear positive things about the owner of the malt shop, who lives in the upper area of Aspen Springs in the gated community. And she was known to give rides to the crazy blonde woman who walks up and down Crooked Road. So to me, I thought that that was something to respect. But I worked long hours and I was burnt out without a day off. Again, worked 11 days straight. So this seems to be typical of Pagosa businesses. They say people don't want to work. They actually, in fact, will discriminate against you if you're not of the approved ethnicity, and they will work you to death and act like, they're totally in the right for doing so. At that time, I made the mistake about driving without insurance, which I don't do anymore. So I ended up being pulled over by the police, and all the earnings from the malt shop went towards my ticket. So I basically worked for free for 2 or 3 weeks. I have some positive things to say about the Wyndham Hotel, if that's how you say it, in Pagosa Springs. I stayed there 3 times to get a break from living in Aspen Springs 6. And when I told the staff, by the way, that I lived in Aspen Springs, she said, okay. She kept tabs after that on where I was staying. I think maybe it was a suspicion that I was going to trash the place, because a lot of people discriminated against people that lived in Aspen Springs and still do, because there's no showers up there. There are criminals, white supremacists, and some meth activity up there, and meth users, a lot of Odin worshipers, which is not in line with the teachings of Jesus Christ. I am a Gnostic Christian, just so you know. And so I don't worship Odin and Christ. I don't worship Adolf Hitler and Christ. And some people think that they can merge the two together. Some people think that white supremacy is in line with biblical teachings, and it's not. I have a Bible, and there's nothing in the Bible that supports white supremacy. White supremacy is of the devil, is of Satan. And so Pagosa Springs is satanic, okay? It's like there's a beautiful woman, and you might think, hey, I want to get with this woman. But in reality, you can't be mesmerized by external beauty. And so even though Pagosa Springs looks like it's something out of Disney, it's highly corrupt. And there are allegations also of, I believe that there is a hot springs company there. I forget the name of it. And at one point, there may have been ties to the cartel. So there were investigations and raids from the government. So let's move on. We covered Tony's Pagosa Brewing. We covered the Vietnamese restaurant and how she tried to get away with not paying me. And I was very uncomfortable being the only person that wasn't white at the folk festival. And if you listen to my content, you know that black people get a pass in the new white supremacy America. There's many white supremacists and blacks working together. So there was one black person that was there, but I was the only person that was actually ethnic that was up there. Black people get a pass. In many cases, I do not. But I do pass for white to a lot of people. But I've actually been very open about my background. And that, in fact, bit me in the ass while living there. Like I said, the Facebook groups were run by people that celebrated the murder of people via drone attack, even though most of the drone attacks didn't attack terrorists, didn't kill terrorists, they killed innocent men, women, and children. And so how would you feel, Archuleta County, America, if China and Russia were to invade? Would you take up arms? You would be in the right. Then why aren't others in the right for defending their country if you know that 9/11 is something that is more than what you were told? Why act like you're aware of 9/11 and other conspiracies when you hate people that don't look like you? Don't you realize that you are feeding into the conspiracy itself? So, Rosie's Pizzeria. I like the fact that she hired me on the spot, but I didn't feel that it's highly corrupt. I didn't feel that her employees liked me. I was asked what my ethnicity was. And when I told them what my ethnicity was, I sensed a coldness from the woman that was beautiful that asked me. I would have loved to have dated her because I didn't seek to date women when I was there. You know, I've dated plenty of women in my life in Portland, where they're highly promiscuous, a city with a lot of strip clubs and porno stores. And as a follower of Christ, I don't think that that type of lifestyle is in line with serving God. Okay, so just so you know. So that's why I didn't necessarily seek to date people there. But her, I would have dated her. But when she asked me what my ethnicity was, and I told her, and I even said that I felt like I was a reincarnated Native American who was returning to my home. And then she looked at me like I was a weirdo, even though she said she was Native. But she was a light-skinned white Native, not a dark-skinned Native. So she wasn't tapped into what I was saying spiritually. And the bartender that was there, who used to call me brother, thanks, brother, when I was sitting there washing dishes. Again, it was an easy job, but he stopped calling me brother after I said my ethnicity. So then I said to Rosie, I think that I should quit because I was asked that question. She said, okay. And then, so I took that as, really? You're not even going to try to keep me? Okay, you can just send my paycheck to the post office box. Let's move on to Coyote Grill. I worked there in 2019, and there was a woman there, a lesbian woman there that worked with me at Pagosa Brewing. And she wrote on the meal ticket, no beaners. Another person wrote on the meal ticket, you know, when you like say no mayonnaise sub when they're on their little computer and they're sending it back to the kitchen because I was doing line work. And the other person wrote no Japs. And I put in my 2-week notice because of that. And I told somebody about it. And he probably blabbed and said that I complained. So then when I tried to take back my 2-week notice, they said, too late. We're actually going to eliminate the position. Okay, so we covered Malt Shop, we covered Coyote Moon, we covered Pagosa Brewing, we covered the Vietnamese restaurant. What am I missing? What am I missing? I do want to say that I experienced also some pretty sharp discrimination from the Durango Sports Club. There was a guy who had the Punisher logo, and I would work out at 6 o'clock in the morning when I was staying at a shelter after I left Archuleta County, after someone put out my address because he hated me standing up for off-gridders and probably thought I was an immigrant Muslim. Again, show me one person who's white who puts out conspiracy content in Archuleta County, who's also ethnic, who has also felt driven from his land because he doesn't have a firearm and nobody would befriend him. So at the Durango Sports Club, there was a guy with the Punisher logo who looked at me like he wanted to kill me. A lot of people with these Punisher logos are not right in the head. It's not about being a superhero. It's about thinking that you can kill and murder with, you know, impunity. The Blue Lives Matter thing is not about respecting cops. It's a gang. That's the truth. I do respect good cops. I do believe there are some good cops out there, and most of the cops in Pagosa and Archuleta, I think, are good folks. Same thing with Durango and La Plata County. But to just worship cops that are corrupt and then to get upset when Donald Trump is arraigned as if any of that's real is totally hypocritical. To say that law enforcement is corrupt when it only goes after like Trump, like what about like the rest of America that has faced situations where they've been set up by the cops? Don't act like that doesn't exist to white people, to black people, to Hispanics, to others. So why worship all cops as heroes? There are also people with a sticker ISIS hunter that I saw drive by the property, also in Durango. So at the sports club there, there were individuals I think I covered all the restaurants. There were individuals that looked at me like I didn't belong there. And there was an old man who worked folding towels. He looked like an old football fan or jock. There were two old men. One was nice to me. One stared at me, talked about me behind my back, and pointed at me. And the owner of Durango Sports Club was never friendly when I came in there looking dirty for a quick sauna. They wanted people that were wealthier, that didn't look ethnic. Even though he had his tokens at the front desk and a black trainer, the owner of the Durango Sports Club was never warm to me. I always got a very negative vibe from the owner of the Durango Sports Club. So, continuing. I come in with soccer shoes. And the old man, as I'm changing, says to another old man, you know, Saddam Hussein would kill his soccer players if they didn't win a soccer game. He meant to say Iraq. He confused Iraq for Iran. This is how they think they're so superior. But yet, in fact, they're inferior. And there were some other things that happened as well. So I remember quitting or canceling my membership at that time, before COVID started. By the time that COVID hit, you would think that I would be living off grid, but because someone put out my address, someone also was doing black magic against me on YouTube, who was a Satanist, some other person who was a neo-Nazi who followed Adolf Hitler and the black pill worldview, was also hating on me and making me feel bad for trying to assert my value. He was not exposing China. They talk about white genocide. What are they doing to warn white women about human trafficking from cartels in China if, in fact, they invade? It's me who has stood up for white off-gridders being kicked off their land. It's me who has never had veterans as fans, as friends. And yet I'm willing to open up my heart to veterans if they literally have remorse for what they've done, because most of them know that there is a deeper truth behind 9/11. And if they don't know that and they're supporting Trump, they're a hypocrite, because Trump is friends with a guy named Alex Jones. And Alex Jones is the guy that motivated me to start my cable access TV show. He made a documentary film called 9/11, The Road to Tyranny. So if you see Trump on a show called The Alex Jones Show, and Alex Jones made 10 documentaries about 9/11, ran around saying 9/11 was an inside job in Austin, Texas, who are you guys to go around saying that Muslims hit you on 9/11 when you see Donald Trump with Alex Jones? I knew that it was a setup, and I knew also that Trump was not really a 9/11 truther, as Christopher Green of AMTV tried to make it out to be. So I worked for Christopher Green of AMTV, who's been on InfoWars, who's been on Russia Today. I worked for him for years up there. And even though, one good thing about Chris Green, he didn't force me to post pro-Trump news. He let me post whatever I wanted. But it got to the point that when I did release Fourth Horse Rising, which was my warning about World War III, warning about Russia, warning about China, that's when he fired me. And I had other people coming after me that worked for the Next News Network that made an allegiance to Russia, that put out fake news about Syrian immigrants, that were mad at me when I made an ebook about the solar flares. So you have people in Archuleta County also that put out fake info about the sun. They say that we're in a grand solar minimum. And even if we do see less solar activity, right now it's a strong solar cycle, and we're affected by the sun. So for those of you that are new, the sun affects crime. The sun affects drug cycles. It increases the amount of unrest that we see. Some of us have a spiritual experience because we take in that prana, that ki, that chi. So we might become more active. Like I'm more active now after I was less active during the solar minimum. But people like the guy in Archuleta County in Pagosa that has the viral YouTube channel about the sun, he also said that I lived there and violated my privacy. When I said sometimes I'm nervous when people ask about my ethnicity, he blew up on me on his property. So beware of buying crap weed from people out there in the hills. In some cases, it's better to go to the dispensary. On that note, moving on. I want to commend Durango Organics. Thank you, Amanda. Good to see you. I'm glad, even though we didn't maintain strong ties in Portland, that you are there now. Tell Angel S. Alex says hi. And send her my videos, Amanda, because she came to my meetups for years, and she owes it to me, as far as I'm concerned, to watch my videos. Because Amanda, she says on her Facebook page, housing is a human right, housing is healthcare. What did Angel S ever do for me when Alex was homeless? She's a hypocrite, Amanda. She's a hypocrite. It's not fair, Amanda. It's not fair. It's not right. It's wrong. I loved her, Amanda, as a friend. Okay, tell her that. And so for people in Portland to treat me like I was a lesser than because I dissed on Portland being unconscious, you know, Amanda, what the situation Portland's in now. You know the truth, Amanda. Portland is in a bad situation. There are bad people in Portland. Am I wrong, Amanda? Am I wrong? I'm being told that there's a crime wave in Portland. I'm being told the cartels in Portland. I'm being told all types of stuff, Amanda, from people that live in Portland. And they're telling me it is messed up. So for Angel S to diss on me, right? And to tell me back in the day that her boyfriend called me Adam Kokesh to hurt my feelings and to lead me astray, people like her, of all people, should know that I was right about the sun, about China, about the downfall of Portland, about unconscious relationships, and so much more. So those people out there moving on that judge me from being from Portland, you don't know how people in Portland judged me, broke my heart, and left me in the street for dead when all I did is stand up for Portlanders and Portland women. So, thank you, Amanda, for reminding me that needed to be brought up. You can just send her the Facebook page that you're watching now, and it's public for everybody. We're going to talk in the future, Amanda, in a future video. But guys, you guys want to talk about leaving Portland and going to Colorado or Nevada? You need to know where you're going first. You need to make sure that you can live off grid. You need to make sure that you have enough money to go into some of these places. Because if you know anything and you've done any research, for those of you that are smart, you know that the reason Portland has so many homeless there is because you cannot just live off grid in a lot of places in America or park overnight or be homeless. So because Portland is more open, or has been for years, and with Measure 110 being legalized as if it was legal when I was 20, I ended up going to jail for drug use. But now you have all these types of drug addicts and criminals and Nazi chop shops, and you have bad homeless messing with the lives of good homeless. So you have good homeless in Portland and you have bad homeless in Portland. And I'm coming back to cable access TV in January, thanks to two good souls. I'm going to have run two shows at once. A lot of people want to hate on Afghanistan while they act like they know something about 9/11 truth. You want to know Afghan history. You want to know about an era of time where women were free, where they were seen at the coffee shops and the restaurants, the men had their faces shaved and they were wearing suits. I come from a long line of scholars. My grandfather was educated in England. Okay? My father came over in 1967 and got a degree from Chicago, Illinois. I don't like my father. He doesn't like me. But they are above average intelligence. My father, right? For those of you that say thank you for your service to veterans, my father served the U.S. military as a translator. So even though my father had the respect of veterans, even though my father had the respect of the government, it would be his mixed race son raised by the white mother that would face way more discrimination than him. Can you hear me now? That's not right, Pagosa Springs. That's not right. I would never recommend people go to Pagosa Springs, because if Leon is also accurate in his warning about what's to come with China and Russia, there's going to be a war, and there's going to be a mass exodus from the West Coast, and there's going to be a coalition of militia, domestic militia, you can even call them the American Mujahideen, that are going to be fighting the Russian invasion, rightfully so. And Pagosa Springs is probably going to be a place where there's going to be battles. And is China going to go for Archuleta Mesa? Is China going to go for Denver and strike Denver and the government bases there? There are a crap ton of targets in Colorado. Wake up, McFly! Wake up, McFly! If this goes down the way I think it's going down, Colorado's going to be a war zone when it's World War III. Right? Mark my words. It's Alex Ansary that warned the American people, and it's Alex Ansary that paid the price. Moving along. Love that Durango Sports Club. I'm telling you, I've sent recent links to things that I've said to people in Durango, and they won't even say a word to me. So I give props to Wen Saunders for giving me an opportunity to live in Pagosa Springs. Durango, Colorado. I stayed there at a homeless shelter for a while because I felt unsafe on my land, and I took off because there were too many crackheads that they were helping out in Durango and providing housing to that were not right in the head. And I dealt with a lot of situations there where drunken Indians were coming into my living space looking for their friend. I saw an increase in MS-13 graffiti in 2020. Also, there was fake news put out about Antifa. I'm anti-Antifa, and I exposed Antifa and was featured on Infowars.com, by the way, in 2010. How many of you have ever megaphoned Antifa and have been on Infowars.com? It is me. So don't you forget it. Someone put out fake news saying Antifa was coming to rip stuff up in Durango. So the right wing with their Facebook page in Durango followed that fake news, which might have been planted by the Russians or the Chinese, and they came with guns in a standoff against Black Lives Matter in downtown Durango, Colorado. That is psycho. I also learned later on that China was involved in promoting the algorithm where the blacks in the ghetto of Chicago went to downtown for a flash mob. I read an article saying China was behind that. So for those of you in denial about Russia, without realizing that Russia today was around for years to pull in American conspiracy theory, but did they really expose the New World Order? And Putin's role in it as both China and Russia call for a New World Order. What were they doing, folks, with Alex Jones' help? Again, the friend of Donald Trump. They were bringing up America's dirt to make America look bad. How do you feel about that, American veterans? Russia today exploiting our problems in America. For those of you that are all about pro-police, Donald Trump, Alex Jones. Do you know how many times Alex Jones attacked the cops? Do you know how many times Alex Jones attacked the veterans? Do you know how many times Alex Jones screamed about a civil war with the cops? Alex Jones, Donald Trump. So for those of you with the eyes to see and ears to hear and heart to feel that are in Archuleta County now or in Costilla County, Colorado now, I want to come back, but I don't have the money to come back because I don't have a job and I'm in poverty. Because I'm in Colorado, I had dental insurance. I had to put the money that I sold from that land into my teeth. But I did buy a car that's late 2010. So that's cool. The woman that sold my land, she was way into conspiracy theories, but instead of me being excited by this, back in the day, I thought anybody in conspiracy theorists was like my best buddy. Let's be friends! My new family. That was the old days before the fake news web of 2014 and 2015, where all Syrian immigrants were demonized as ISIS, which I stood against, knowing that I can pass for Syrian, I can pass for Palestinian, and now with MAGA saying they're coming in across the border, knowing that Muslim false flags are in the works probably. And some say that what happened on October 7th in Israel, where they allegedly kidnapped the women, many people say that that's a false flag. So I'm here to tell you that it's very possible that they're setting things up so that the MAGA crowd and the Alex Jones fans round up Muslims in the future once they're declared a national security threat. And so as a person that's been rejected by all Muslims, that can't talk to any refugee groups, anything I try to do to warn them about what I see coming, increase in hate crimes. Again, a 6-year-old Palestinian boy was killed by a person listening to a man by the name of Jonathan Cain, who's tied in with, guess who? Former guest of mine, Tom Horn, who just passed away. So I have been loyal, folks, to my former guests. I have prayed for them. You know how many former guests I've had, right, that are no longer with us? Jim Mars, Tex Mars, Michael Batnerick, Michael Rupert, author of Crossing the Rubicon, Alan Watt, traded emails with Jordan Maxwell. What I'm saying is there's nobody like me in the American conspiracy movement. And it's not about being narcissistic. It's about asserting my value in a world in which I was conditioned to hide myself. Even Freeman Fly, former guest of mine, said, "What is Alex Ansary doing up in the hills of Southwest Colorado? He should be at a studio." Yes, a guy like me should be on the air. A guy like me should be working with a crew of 10 people. A guy like me should be practicing my martial arts skills with the best of the best, instead of dealing with these racist MMA fighters that are worshiping the right wing. I don't have anything to do with Antifa, the controlled left, or the right wing, because neither the left or the right speaks for people like me. And I do more than anybody of my father's bloodline, just so you know, to speak up for their country, even though I'm in the American conspiracy movement. I do more in a few weeks than they've done in a whole lifetime. And I'm not super pro Amy Goodman, but Amy Goodman, this leftist talk show host, has done more to expose the violations of the rights of detainees than Alex Jones and David Icke and others ever will do over the course of their whole lifetimes. So I'm going to try to find a conclusion, make sure I covered everything here. So we talked about Rosie's Pizzeria, Pagosa Brewing, Durango Sports Club, Durango Organics. I left you some links on my Facebook page, and I told you about the history of Costilla County, okay? And that there were people, by the way, that came into Costilla County by the name of Bruce D, who I did not believe was legit, who I thought was an agent provocateur. So not only did I stand up for off-gridders and get it out there in the news, where W7 and all these off-grid websites picked up my story and ran with it, there were people that came in that said they were sovereign citizens that wanted to rile the people up and were calling for arrest of local officials. And I'm not an idiot. I knew right away those could have been government agents or people led by government agents. And so instead of people hearing my warning, there were people that trusted those people, including Pete Santilli, who some believe is a government agent. And so at the wildlife refuge, where you had people that were burning the Quran and involved in that level of radicalization while falsely claiming that Facebook was pro-Muslim, when it's the opposite. Facebook has played a role in the genocide of Muslims, not only in Myanmar, also known as Burma, but also radicalizing the Hindu extremists. Okay? And so these things need to be understood because so many people trust Facebook with their information, with these Facebook groups that are living off grid, when in fact Facebook has been involved in mind control. How many of you out there know that 3 states, received the algorithm in 3 states, Colorado, Virginia, and Florida, pushed the most amount of fake news regarding Muslims? It wasn't equal throughout the 50 states of the USA. Like Oregon, California, Idaho, Montana, New York. People in those states, like for example, if I was to go off grid in those states, I would not be coming across people as radicalized. It was because I went off grid in Colorado in 2016. And instead of people look down upon me, they should realize that I have courage, that I have guts, that I have bravery. And it takes real faith in God to live somewhere off grid without a gun, where the people around you that think that they're victims, that think that they're being genocided, are armed to the teeth and don't realize how much they have going for them. So I do think that you're going to see more and more people move to that area, fleeing the West Coast in the future. And the property values are going to go up. I want to keep this under an hour. There was a situation that I'm going to tell you about now. Let's see how much time we're at. We're at 37 minutes. I went to a church called CrossRoads, which is down there in Pagosa, after one of my neighbors was close to murdering the black woman that he had on his property. So here I am hearing him screaming about the N-word while he shoots off his gun and joking when I'm having beer with him about eating and raping Iranians, which was disgusting and horrifying. Also, when I was up there, nobody would help me when my car was broken down except for one old man. But other than that, another guy came by who literally, after having a few beers, said that we need to pray for Hitler. Yeah. After we have some beers in us and we get a buzz going on, he says, we need to pray for Hitler. And thank you, Amanda. We can talk also on the side. And I just want to keep my thoughts here. That was very disturbing to me, to come across someone praising Hitler on my own land. And a lot of people don't realize that they push conspiracy theory all the time on Netflix and Tubi and streaming video content, but it's QAnon, Trump worshiping conspiracy. They don't tell the truth about 9/11, but if they do, it's zeitgeist. They never show a documentary about Afghanistan. Whatever they do show is from the perspective of a soldier. So I'm here to say, for those of you that are going to defend your land in the future against China and Russia, remember my name because I warned you first. But not only are you in the right to defend your land for what's to come, God be with you on your mission. In Jesus' name, amen. You're not in the right to invade other countries and think that you can kill with impunity, to celebrate the murder of men, women, and children with drone attacks, and to think that there isn't some sort of darkness that comes back at you from that experience. So I went to CrossRoads Church, like I went to many churches, seeking some sort of prayer. They didn't pray for me. They judged me, and the woman said, I don't know if your God is the same as our God. I don't know if that was because I was ethnic or because I said I was a Gnostic and exposed the archons. In Christianity, they're known as the demons. In Islam, they're known as the jinn. And so I spent many hours there talking with one of their therapists. And instead of them realizing that I had PTSD from my own experience, they treated me like I was crazy. I sat down with the head pastor of the church and told him about my warnings of China. And I told him I was one of the few. And he tried to downplay my warnings and act like, no, plenty of people have warned about China. Really, dude? Show me with their given birth name. Really? They interviewed someone like Leon about who had a vision of it happening. They made documentaries about it. Really? Show me. What's their name? So in reality, the pastor at the CrossRoads Church, who I recently sent a video to, also sent a link to Pagosa Daily Post, right? They act like they're so loving. They act like they say Black Lives Matter, the Pagosa Daily Post guy, as he covers the BLM protest there. But when it comes to somebody like me, who's not a Democrat, who's not a Republican, who stood up for off-gridders and engaged in original journalism without an income, okay, without an income, suffering from the lifetime of trauma that I had, being discarded by many, many former employers like the Benson Hotel, like Fred Meyer, like Ruth Chris Steakhouse. So that was a day in which I remember being in tears because I was so traumatized by the fact that the black woman was screaming for help when the guy was acting like he was going to run her over with his car. He's saying, get out, get out. And I hear him going back and forth, vroom, vroom, and she's screaming in the woods of Archuleta County, help me, somebody help me. And here I go to a church where they supposedly are followers of Christ, and they think I'm crazy because I'm traumatized by what I experienced that night because I don't have a gun. That guy had a gun. And if I was to go over there and intervene, I could have ended up killed. The people in Archuleta County didn't help me when I needed a ride when my car broke down. Only a Nazi came over who wanted to pray for Hitler. Another guy was a white nationalist who believes that 9/11 was an inside job, right? I knew this was coming years ago, for there to be 9/11 truthers who also are white nationalists. And then there were other Nazis that came by my property uninvited. And I really feel like they were spies for people that ran the Facebook groups down below. There was also, like I said, they shot their guns, and there were some people that reported that there were bullets whizzing by their properties. So there were people that were driving around looking to see where the gunshots were coming from. So in reality, you have an area like Aspen Springs 6, which is a place where you can live off the grid, but it is violent. The people there are unstable. They shoot their guns without any remorse for who they harm. And there are people out there that are not Muslims, that are not immigrants, that are probably not Mexicans, that go around breaking into properties and stealing things from their sheds. And when I left for a short amount of time, my generator was taken, and I have a good idea of who did it. So my advice for the people of Archuleta County is, when these things come into fruition and the grid collapses, and you start hearing about attacks on America from China and Russia, I want you to remember people like me who tried to help you. And you need to understand that the people that you did help, the people that you did hire, the people that you did befriend, the people that you did date, the people that you did talk to, the people that you did care about, the people that you didn't see as a subhuman, they have done nothing, not 1/100th of the things that I have done for you. I think that wraps it up. Amanda, thanks for being here. Jordan, thanks for being here. May the people watching this evolve in mind, body, and spirit to survive the things that are coming. In Jesus' name, amen.